everyone, this is Max 2011 and the topic of this mini podcast is communication, power and social media. Firstly, let's look at some definitions of power. So power is a key concept in fields, in disciplines such as political theory or sociology, and it has been defined in different ways. So the sociologist Max Weber argues that it is the chance of a man or a number of men to realize their own will in a social action, even against the resistance of others who are participating in the action. For the critical theorist Jürgen Habermas, power has to do with the realization of collective goals, means of coercion, symbols of power and status, decision-making authorities, disadvantages, power of definition, counterpower, organization, and legitimation. Niklas Luhmann sees power as the achievement of inducing someone to act in a certain way when he wouldn't act that way normally, and only does so due to the threat of possible sanctions. So we can see that for these authors, power has to do with the capacity of one group to use means of coercion against others so that it asserts its will and interests. However, no matter which of these definitions one follows, it is clear that power has to do with the question of who can influence what society looks like and who controls the means that allow such influence. So power, as we said, is associated with coercion, domination, violence or potential violence, and also asymmetry. However, moving beyond these traditional conceptions of power, which often associate power with powerful bodies such as the state or official state institutions, let's turn to Michel Foucault's notion of power. He argued that power is not only a negative force which is located in these dominant bodies, such as the state or other companies. However, Foucault argued that the conventional view of the effects of power, which is that power excludes, represses, censors, abstracts, masks, and conceals, is outdated. He suggests instead that we should stop thinking of power only in negative terms. We should recognize that power produces. It produces reality, and it produces domains of objects and rituals of truth. The individual and the knowledge that may be gained of him belong to this production. He also said that there are no relations of power without resistance. Similarly, Anthony Giddens defined power as transformative capacity, so the capability to intervene in a given set of events so as in some way to alter them. And it's also this notion of power as a productive capacity. It's also opposed to Weber, Habermas and Luhmann, because here power as a counterpower has the capacity of humans to act and to thereby transform society. As we are talking about communication and social media, it is inevitable that we turn to the ideas of the influential communication theorist Manuel Castells. Castells has written extensively on the concept of power in the current context of society, which is dominated by media and information flows, and refers to this as the information society. In the information society, he contends, communication and communication technologies have become ubiquitous in everyday life and society. And the question is therefore how power has been transformed in an information society and what communication power is. So communication and knowledge have always been important sources of power and counterpower, dominance, and societal change throughout history. This is due to the fact that the most important war in society is the battle for people's minds. The fate of the rules and values that societies are built on is determined by how individuals think. While fear and coercion are important tools for enforcing the dominant's will on the dominated, few institutional systems can persist long if they are primarily focused solely on repression. Torture of the body, Manuel Castells argue, is less effective than brainwashing. Since the rise of the Internet in the early 1990s, the world's networked population has grown from the low millions to the low billions. Over the same period, social media have become a fact of life for civil society worldwide, involving many actors ranging from regular citizens, activists, non-governmental organizations to telecommunications firms, software providers, and governments. And as the communication landscape gets denser, more complex, and more participatory, the networked population is gaining greater access to information, more opportunities to engage in public speech, and an enhanced ability to undertake collective action. In the political arena, these increased freedoms can help loosely coordinated publics to demand change. We can use the example of the Manila demonstrations. For example, this Philippine strategy has been adopted many times since. So in some cases, the protesters ultimately succeeded, as in Spain in 2004, for example, when demonstrations organized by text messaging led to the quick ouster of Spanish Prime Minister José María Aznar, who had inaccurately blamed the Madrid transit bombings on Basque separatists. The Communist Party in Moldova in 2009 lost its power because of massive protests which were coordinated by text messages. Facebook and Twitter broke out after an obviously fraudulent election. Around the world, the Catholic Church has also faced lawsuits over its harboring of child rapists, a process that started when the Boston Globe's 2002 expose of social abuse in the church went viral online in a matter of hours. There are, however, many examples of the activists failing, as in Belarus in March 2006, for example, when street protests, which were arranged in part by email also, against President Alexander Lukashenko alleged vote rigging swelled, then faltered, and which left Lukashenko more determined than ever to control social media. During the June 2009 uprising of the Green Movement in Iran, activists used every possible technological coordinating tool to protest the miscount of votes for Mir Hossein Mousavi, but were ultimately brought to heel by a violent crackdown. And the Red Shirt uprising in Thailand in 2010 followed a similar but quicker path. Protesters savvy with social media occupied downtown Bangkok until the Thai government dispersed the protesters, killing dozens of civilians. The use of social media tools, text messaging, email, photo sharing, social networking, and the like, does not have a single preordained outcome. Therefore, attempts to outline their effects on political actions are often too reduced to dueling anecdotes. As Manuel Castells puts it, social media allows subjects to watch the powerful, so it gives us, the people, the tools to counter the dominant status quo. But those in power have also made it their priority to harness the potential of mass self-communication in the service of their specific interests. Castells speaks here of a dialectical process in relation to social media as a mass self-communication. So if you regard the failure of the Belarusian protests to oust Lukashenko as paradigmatic, you will regard the Moldovan experience as an outlier and vice versa. Empirical work on the subject is also hard to come by, in part because these tools are so new and in part because relevant examples are so rare. The safest characterization of recent quantitative attempts to answer the question, do digital tools enhance democracy, is essential to this subject. Now please go to the VLE folder and read Manuel Castell's Communication Power and Counterpower in the Network Society article. Then answer the following questions. What is communication power? What is communication counterpower? How can the two terms be defined? Which definition should be employed? The one by Castells or another one, and why? Please note down your answers on a separate sheet and bring them to the classroom. Also, in addition to reading the mentioned article, please prepare an example of communication power and communication counterpower on social media. So find a short YouTube video that you can present to the rest of the class in the next session, which is connected to the topic of communication power.